Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I'd like to start by taking a look at the latest satellite data. As we kind of just come back through this afternoon on Monday, we can see here the broader shield of clouds that's associated with what's left now of once Hurricane Henri. Still spreading some heavier rains in parts of New England here, but it's now been kind of sheared apart. You can see to the south of it a stalled out boundary right in through this area, something I'll be watching here for the next couple of days. We've had some isolated convection in this area from all the way in Arkansas to Missouri and Illinois today, and some of these storms have put down some locally heavy rain, even some hail. And you can see how deep the convection is there by looking at how bright white those cloud tops are. Storms starting to pop here as well. We're going to keep an eye on this area late tonight. You can see the extent of the smoke coming from the wildfires in California and Oregon, spreading across Nevada, Idaho, and then eventually coming here to the northern plains. So that's a quick rundown of the big things we're seeing here on satellite. Next, I want to take a look back at the last week's worth of rainfall. Now, this was valid through 12 a.m. this morning, so you notice we don't have the new rains that came through this area today. But it kind of captures the bigger pattern. There was Fred. We then saw Henri coming in through here, both of them hitting the northeast, putting down a lot of flooding rains. But Fred, after coming through the Appalachian Mountains, producing in some places 6 to 10 inches, did a lot of flooding there as well. There was our stalled out frontal boundary right in through here that stretched from South Carolina back to the Red River Valley of the South, on which some of the storms produced 6 to 8 inches of rainfall. And then we had our waves coming into the northwest, our first pattern break, our first significant pattern break since June that's returned moisture to a broad area here in the northern tier of the United States that had been so dry. Same thing for the Canadian prairie. But if you get a moment, check out my in-depth video and I'll discuss the model performance on the flooding rains right here in parts of Middle Tennessee. We had a Kokora station just to the west of Nashville that picked up 18 inches of rainfall from this particular event. And you can go back and watch that video and see how well the models picked up on it, something I would like you to do if you get a chance to do it. But where's this all going? Well, let's check into severe weather first. Target area tonight is right in through here. We're also watching the storms in here, and this is what's left from Henri. Okay? But then getting into tomorrow, you see that the Storm Prediction Center kind of broadens out an area where they've given a marginal risk of severe storms in through here. And I'm going to show you to you why they're doing that. Now, if you got a chance to watch the in-depth video, got some new data for this one. Even though I recorded them one right after another, the 18Z NAM came in. And now it's resolving quite a bit better. The storms we're expecting tonight to be right here in this part of South Dakota and Nebraska. And those storms are going to be the alpha from them is going to be what initiates what's going to happen tomorrow in parts of the upper Midwest. So these storms tonight could pack quite a punch. I'm concerned about straight line wind damage, also possibly some hail, and we cannot rule out the possibility of isolated tornadoes. But you'll notice that getting into the overnight hours, these storms press through basically the Lincoln to Omaha area and then eventually into Iowa, and we could see some scattered storms out ahead of it. There's that stalled out frontal boundary I mentioned, and more storms moving through the southern Canadian prairie, according to the high-res NAM model. Now, getting into the morning tomorrow on Tuesday, and then stretching this out through Tuesday midday, afternoon, and evening. I just want to illustrate that the models are attempting in this area, and I talked about this in the in-depth video as well, at producing, again, on the outflow of the storms tonight here, are attempting to produce some sort of squall line event that goes through southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois into this area. So we're going to watch it carefully to see how that evolves. But just understand, forecasting this particular setup where we're watching these subtle boundaries that are formed on the outflow storms is going to be extremely challenging. Well, as we go through the day on Wednesday, those storms move into lower Michigan. And here we are early in the morning on Wednesday, pressing through the rest of the day. And what I'm going to make a point about is that through much of the next 2 weeks, there is going to be a lot of isolated thunderstorm activity across a big section of the United States. And that's a main takeaway from our videos today. But before I get into too much detail over that, let's do a quick check-in on the tropics. So what's left of Henri is here. And as you can see, the National Hurricane Center's got 3 different areas that they've all given a 40% chance of development. Now, I'm most concerned about this system here coming over towards Central America, heading toward the Bay of Campeche, and possibly maybe 6-7 days from now emerging here in the Bay of Campeche or possibly into the Gulf. The operational European wants to take it and push it right toward the Texas coast. But right now, it doesn't look like much. This is the latest satellite data, and we're just talking about this cluster of storms here. So we got to wait a while to see how this develops, and we know that the models struggle with initialization. But let's keep an eye in this area throughout the rest of this week. Now, following it, we have a couple of tropical disturbances, but look at all the dusty air that's in place here. Kind of rock back and forth. You can see it pretty clearly as the sun was setting over there in Western Africa. There's a lot of dust that these systems are chewing on right now. But what I'm most concerned about is getting out there maybe from the 26th to the 29th. The European model gives this better than 60% chance of seeing some development. So I'm going to watch that one most carefully. All right. From here, let's just take a look at what the WPC, this is the National Weather Service product, is forecasting for the next 7 days. And as we discuss this area, going to see a lot of storms. Same thing through this part of the Canadian Prairie and along that frontal boundary. We will stretch storms in between. They're going to be isolated in this area, but that's what we're looking at. Our best chances of some heaviest rain are coming into parts of northern Iowa, much of Minnesota and Wisconsin. Now, I understand for a lot of folks in that area, this is rain I wish I could have forecast for you throughout June, July, and early August, but we're bringing that rainfall in now as it appears. Why weren't we getting it during that time period? Well, I'd like to show it to you quickly here. From mid-June through August 13th, we had a large ridge sitting right here, and it kind of opened the flow up in this whole area to be quite weak, and the jet stream went over the top of it, and it also kind of went to the south of it, and the net effect was we had everything, all the action was downstream. And that ridge, which sat over the Pacific Northwest, not only cranked up temperatures in the west, but across the northern interior of the U.S. And what happened since the 13th, okay, so let's just go back, what is that, 10 days, is that we took this ridge, ready, and shoved it here. Sorry, there we go. And with the low to the north, the jet stream level winds were fast through this area, sending troughs in like this. And now we got this pattern that keeps sweeping those troughs through along the U.S.-Canada border. Big ridge built into Greenland. You probably heard some news stories about the rainfall in parts of Greenland we saw over the weekend on the heat. Well, that's where that ridge is now. And that's the pattern change, all defined in one simple slide. We took the ridge from here and moved it about 800 miles to the west. And that changed everything. Couldn't get that to happen in June, July, but here we have it now. So what does this end up doing, and how long does it last? Well, I'm going to play this pretty quickly, but we're going to watch the 12Z European model trough ridge pattern. And what I want you to notice as I play this is two things. We're going to keep an eye on that tropical system, keep an eye down here in a few moments, but you will see repeated troughs coming through this section of the country with more broad ridging here. Ready? This goes from Monday through Tuesday into Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. And look, we still have those troughs sweeping through this area because that deeper trough here is sending those short waves through. The downstream ridge means that we'll see cooler weather here and much above average temperatures there. And this is going to be really high humidity air in place. We keep playing forward through the weekend, getting out into early next week. And what do we see the European model doing? It's attempting to produce this tropical system here. Now, I want to be very clear with what we're looking at. This is an operational European model run. It means it's not set in stone. And we are a week out in the forecast here looking at the position of a single tropical system. So much can change. But what is not changing is that ridge and these troughs running here. So if we put all that together, I'd like to show you what the European model is putting out for precipitation. Ready? As we play through the rest of the day on Monday into Tuesday, our first wave moves in here. So this is bringing in those storms we just discussed, right? Now it's a little displaced in the European, but it's still there. We're going to watch this area tomorrow night for those stronger storms to move through. There's our weak frontal boundary. And you're just going to see flashes of green across the south. This is all scattered thunderstorms. Now system number 1 moves out to parts of Ontario. Then as we get into the middle of the week, look at what changes here. And I'll park this right here about Thursday evening. If you notice on Thursday evening, a high pressure cell takes over Ontario. And to the south of it, we're going to get a lot of storms in this area, linked up with a frontal boundary that's way up here. And there's scattered storms in the Appalachian Mountains and over the southeast, but as I play this forward, what you're going to notice is there's high pressure here and generally higher pressure to the south. We're going to feed moisture in between the two, and it kind of gets sandwiched in lift, and that provides a lot of the lift in the atmosphere. So this is round number 2 this week coming into the parts of the upper Midwest for some of the heavier rains. Then we play this out through the weekend. That takes on the shape of a weaker low that moves over Lake Superior. And then going into Saturday, now getting into Sunday, another trough dips in, and it brings in its front and moves off to the east. scattered storms over the southeast, and here's what the European model is attempting to do. And again, this is the operational run with that tropical system. It's attempting to take it right into this part of Texas about a week from now. Now let's stitch this all together and just look at total accumulated precipitation from the European model. A couple things to point out. There's that tropical system. Multiple waves moving through here. We got the one today and tomorrow. We have the one at the end of the week. And then you saw there's one following that. It's stormy across the Canadian prairie. In between, a lot of scattered storms. But where we're drier, back maybe over toward Texas where the storms are a bit more isolated. And I do expect to see a lot of isolated storms in the mountains. From there, this is what the GFS says. And to be honest, there's some pretty good agreement overall in the models. Now, there's differences in amounts, but we always have that. And just for completeness, I'm going to go ahead and compare them both. Now remember, you can pause and take a closer look, but the European is wetter in these colors, the GFS is wetter in those. All right, take a moment, pause it, and have a closer look at the differences in the model. I want to keep moving though, and I'd like to talk about what's going to happen into week 2. Because once again, we favor troughing along the west coast, ridging over the Great Lakes, broader ridging toward Greenland, and honestly, ridging in the Gulf of Alaska. And what that tends to do is lets these troughs sweep through on just wide open moisture transport and strong evapotranspiration from the crops. So the GFS says, make it storm. It's too dry in through here. It has been all season long. But it has a lot of storms stretching from parts of the Mid-South over to the Ohio River Valley, back through the Midwest all the way to the Canadian prairie. And you can even see the storms over the Four Corners states. Now what I want to do next is show you the European. Same features dominated by that trough. And as a result, we end up getting this. That's the week 2 precipitation pattern. Now, when we think about where this pattern's going, I want to show you something amazing here. I've been keeping track over the last 180 days of the weather in, well, actually across 30,000 different locations in the U.S., but I pulled out Great Falls. And after having such extremely hot weather compared to normal all summer, this was the pattern shift last week, which dropped their high temperatures, as you see here, down below the average low temperature. And that shift came with some rainfall as well. Now, in that same area, we are expecting, well, a little bit farther to the west, there's a frost advisory. See the color matching up down here? And while those troughs dip in, look at the heat and humidity that's expanding here in the Mid-South toward parts of the Midwest. Excessive heat warnings down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley. Where are these temperatures going? Well, just watch with me here. Monday's high temperatures, we've already seen these, but getting into Tuesday and Wednesday, it's a scorcher in through this area, and it's going to be humid. But that cooler air is in place. It's even cooler along the west coast as well compared to normal. And going out to Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, that whole pattern just gets put on wash, rinse, repeat. You notice it with me there, right? Day 5 through 10, shrink this up so we can see a little bit better there. This whole area is sitting about 3 to 10 degrees above normal. With the trough sweeping through here, though, we're cooler than average, as you can see here. And the cooler coming into Texas, that's because the European model that I'm using here is forecasting that tropical system to push its clouds in. We'll watch that very carefully. Day 10 through 15, still mild from the Central Plains over toward the East Coast, cooler along the northern tier of the United States. And the model's been pretty consistent with that pattern as well. What I'd like to finish with is 2 things. September. The latest update from the European just released this afternoon continues on the trend we've now seen for the last, 12 days. And what it's showing you here is that we're expecting this area to continue to have open Gulf moisture and just be quite stormy through September. So the question is, when does that shut down? Because as we look at ocean temperatures, our La Nina is still developing, although it's taken a little bit of a slower ride here. And what I mean by that is the trade winds have backed off, the Southern Oscillation Index is back closer to normal. But remember, we're going to watch that later in the season by the time we get to October. And I want you all to watch this with me as we get into the beginning of the new month of September. We'll get an update of this because right now the model's favoring drier harvest weather here, but wetter weather moving in. That's very typical of La Nina in the Northwest and drier here in the central part of the U.S. And what will be more important, I think, at that point too, is going to be what's going on in South America. Does the drier conditions of the South expand north? Do the rains come in timely here? We're going to watch all of that to see how things shift, and I'll bring out those updates to you again on Thursday, okay? Appreciate your attention, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.